Good afternoon. Excuse me. National Assembly for Wales is now in session. And before we start the agenda, it gives me great pleasure to announce, in accordance with Standing Order 26.75, that both the Rented Homes Wales Bill and the Regulation and Inspection of Social Care Wales Bill were given the royal assent on the 18th of January. We now move to the first item on the agenda this afternoon, and that's questions to the First Minister. Question 1, Claire Griffith.
Diolch Llywydd.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. What specific steps is the Welsh Government taking to support farmers who are waiting for payments under the Basic Payment Scheme?
Well, within a payment window commencing the 1st December last year and which will end on the 30th of June, we've already paid 73% of businesses and are promptly processing remaining claims. Farmers who have not received payment by the end of January will receive a letter updating them on progress and when they should expect payment.
Well, as you've said, a quarter of Welsh farmers are still waiting. I'm sure that many of us as Assembly members will have received messages from some of them who are facing a very dire financial situation as a result of awaiting this payment. Can I therefore ask, in situations where people are facing hardship, and the Deputy Minister has asked us to refer cases to her, of course, but also in cases once the Deputy Minister has looked at those cases and it's clear that the payment will not receive any time soon, will you as a government be willing to consider developing some method of providing some part payment at an earlier date in order to ensure that the welfare of those individuals or their livestock suffers?
Well, of course, we're willing to look at any way of ensuring that they are paid. One of the problems, of course, with, for example, the cross-border farms is that we haven't yet received the details or the data from the body in England. We expect to receive that next month. And, of course, we must ensure that we must make sure that we do continue to pay the farmers. We're doing much better than England. It's only 7% that's been paid in England and 18% in Scotland, or 67%, sorry, in Scotland. So we hope that the payments will be made as soon as possible.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, last year you'll be aware that the Deputy Minister wrote to me to state that your government had the right to make payments under this scheme from the middle of October onwards, but that you as a government have decided not to do that. Don't you accept that it would have been sensible to have started to make these payments at that point to ensure that your officials had more time to concentrate on the most complex cases, and then more farmers would have received their payments in full?
Well, no, I don't accept that, bearing in mind there's a higher percentage of farmers having been paid in Wales than in England, and we're doing far better than Scotland. And so I believe that the system that's been adopted is one which is robust, and it demonstrates that, well, as is evidenced by the fact that the majority of Welsh farmers have been paid. Of course, there are some difficult, complex cases that are still outstanding, but we are very confident that the situation will improve yet again over the ensuing weeks.
Powell.
Diolch Llywydd. And before proceeding to my question, I draw members' attention to my register of interests in terms of our own family farming partnership. First Minister, in last week's written statement, your Deputy Minister for Farming and Food urged farmers, and I quote, to resist the temptation to phone the customer contact centre to chase payment and not to divert staff unnecessarily from the business of making the remaining payments. Now, whilst I understand fully that time and resources are limited, given the extreme stress that certain farm businesses in Wales are under, would you reiterate today that it is important that farmers can make contact with the advice centres if they are in a situation where they think there's been some irregularity, or whether they've got specific issues to raise because of the potential stress which many of them are under, as we've heard in previous weeks?
Well, yes, I'd urge farmers to track the progress of their claims using RPW Online. That service is available. That does explain whether there are any outstanding queries, and that will provide them with the information more quickly, I'd argue, than by telephoning. Can also say, of course, that the farm liaison services there in the livestock marts and via the phone to offer one-to-one support and advice to farmers on these matters as well.
Question 2, Altaf Hussain.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Good afternoon, First Minister. What are the Welsh Government's plans for improving the provision of social care in Wales?
Well, in Wales, we regulate for success. Yesterday, I sealed the new legislation, the Regulation and Inspection of Social Care Wales Act, as it is now. And we continue to support the provision of effective, citizen-centred social care. The new legislative landscape, alongside our decision to protect social care budgets, allows the sector to meet the challenges ahead.
Thank you very much, First Minister. First Minister, while we welcome the additional money in the budget of social services, cuts in other areas are impacting on social care provision. Your government has cut funding to many organizations in receipt of the Sustainable Social Service Grant and changed the way grants are awarded to care and repair agencies. The way your government is now awarding grants in endangering the provision of social care and will have an impact on the NHS by increasing delayed transfers of care. Therefore, will you look again at the grant award process and ensure those organizations in receipt of grants designed to help the most vulnerable in our society are able to plan for the future?
Well, I can say that in the draft budget on the 8th of December, an additional £21 million was included in that statement in recognition of the pressures on social services in Wales. In England, between 2010 and 2015, there was a cut of 11.5% in the social services budget. We see, for example, the latest figures published by the Treasury, the combined spending per head on health and social services was 7% higher than in England. We've established the Intermediate Care Fund of 50 million. Of course, that is helping to avoid unnecessary hospital and residential admissions, making sure there are no delays in hospital discharges, and that fund also promotes independent living. We have made our financial commitment to social services. We will not pass the blame on to local government, which is what is happening under the government in England, and we will continue to fund social services in Wales in the way that our people would expect.
Lynn Eagle.
First Minister, as you've just said, despite the challenges caused by Tory funding cuts to Wales, things are much better here because of the steps this government has taken to protect social services. Can I ask whether you're aware of the recent Guardian survey that found that the vast majority of social workers are happy in their roles in Wales, 87% compared to 69% in the southwest of England? And would you agree with me that the consultation announced by the Minister this morning on ending zero-hour contracts and ensuring domiciliary workforce is well paid is a further step forward ensuring that social care is a positive career in Wales?
Yes, I do, and I thank the member for the question. It's a sign of the recognition that the profession has shown in the investment that's been made in the workforce in Wales. The survey showed that Wales is a place, a nation, where social work is recognised and valued. It was said that it's a better place to be, and social workers in Wales are the happiest in the UK. And so that research is very welcome, of course, and it shows that where you invest in those who work in social care, their morale increases, and importantly, the service that they provide to the public improves as well.
Ellen Jones.
First Minister, 4 times in this Assembly, your government and the Labour bloc has voted against the chance to place in legislation a ban on zero-hours contracts in the care sector. Perhaps you'd like to explain to the Assembly why you prefer to vote against the introduction of this in this Assembly and in your term of government, and to postpone it until the next Assembly by introducing a consultation only on this important issue during your time as First Minister?
Well, we didn't have any kind of a problem as regards the principle of it. That's fine. But we wanted to ensure that 0 hours contract are a thing of the past too. But that would mean adding to the bills going through the Assembly, and also there'd be greater risk that those bills would then be referred to the Supreme Court. We wanted to ensure that there was a direct way of doing this, and if so, the United Kingdom government, if they want to refer any bill to the courts, that's a matter for them. But we didn't want to endanger any major bill, and that was our concern.
Now move to questions to party leaders, from the party leaders, I beg your pardon. And the first this afternoon, Leader of the Opposition, Andrew Archie-Davies.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, we all witnessed the terrible news yesterday coming out of Port Talbot and other plants across Wales, and indeed the rest of the United Kingdom. One job loss is one too many, devastating news for families and the individuals, highly skilled individuals in many cases, who have given a lifetime service to the steel industry. There have been UK summits, there have been Welsh summits. I think November the 5th, the Minister here held a steel summit with the industry. Can you tell us what tangible efforts were made after that summit to offer support from the Welsh Government, in particular business rates, to the steel industry here in Wales?
Well, first of all, we know, and I know obviously the Minister will make a statement on this later on this afternoon, that this is very difficult news for Port Talbot and the surrounding area. Can I pay tribute to the unstinting efforts of David Rees, the Assembly Member, who I know has been very concerned as somebody from the area and with great roots in the area in terms of what the future holds. What Tata have said to us is that there is, as we all know, an issue with oversupply of steel. That is a matter for the European Commission to resolve as far as Europe is concerned. The strong pound, Tata tell us, is not helpful in terms of exporting steel from the UK, and we know that there are issues with regard to high energy costs, which the UK government has recognised in the statement that they made last month. We accept that business rates were devolved to us in April last year. There is a review that is already in place. The Minister will indicate that that review will move ahead with urgency to see what we can do to help Tata with business rates. Business rates on their own are never going to be enough in terms of the kind of money that's going to need to be made available. Energy costs need to be dealt with. They are a major factor for Tata. And above all else, Tata want to feel, and they have said this to us, they're content with the relationship that they have with us and the work that we have done for them. They need to feel that the UK government really and truly believes that there's a future for steel in the UK.
First Minister, there is a future for steel in the UK. I passionately believe that. Any advanced economy has to retain its steel industry, and I would stand shoulder to shoulder with anyone who wanted to argue the case to make sure that we do have a strong steel industry here in Wales and the rest of the United Kingdom. And it is vital that we do stand shoulder to shoulder. There's a vital board meeting in Mumbai next month where the Tata board will obviously discuss whether actions taken to date do warrant further investment and further positive decisions in the Port Talbot Steelworks, but also other sites that they have across Wales and across the United Kingdom. But it is a fact that the Chief Executive, and I do take your point about business rates on their own, would not be the solution to this problem. Obviously, imports and dumping and energy costs are important parts of the equation. But the Chief Executive of Tata Steel Europe did point to business rates as being one of the blocks that they require to be addressed in the wall of support that they require. So it is important that when we look at this chamber and what this government can do, we look to what you will be announcing, maybe after tomorrow's meeting or sooner, about business rates. And I do put the question again to you. Is there any respite available to steel producers here in Wales on business rates, because obviously there is Celsa Steel here in Cardiff as well, and it couldn't be offered to just one steel producer, it would have to be offered to the industry as a whole.
That is the issue, and that of course makes it expensive as far as government is concerned. But what I can say is that the Minister is writing to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, asking him to designate Port Talbot as an enterprise zone. That will mean assistance in terms of capital allowances. That will mean that we will be able to target business rate relief, and we look forward to the Chancellor of the Exchequer agreeing that we should be able to do that here in Wales. Yes, we recognise, of course, that we need to do work on business rates, but the UK government also has to recognise that there are factors here that are outside of the control of the Welsh government. There are two unique factors that affect the steel industry only in Britain, that don't affect the steel industry elsewhere in Europe. One is the strength of currency. That is something that Tata has flagged up very strongly with us. There is less that the UK government, they're not powerless, but there's less the UK government can do about that, but energy costs. And that is something we have been lobbying the UK government about for 4 years. They recognised last month this was an issue. We do need to see action on this now. We will work with the UK government, because I think the last thing that those who see their jobs at risk want to see is a political battle taking place. But we have to understand there are, of course, challenges for us as a government. There are major challenges for the UK government, and indeed there are challenges for the European Commission.
Well, I look forward to working with you and any other politicians who do want to advance the cause of Talbot and other steelworks here in Wales, and I too will be joining in those discussions and correspondence with the Chancellor to see what help we can offer from the Welsh Conservatives, in particular building on our 5-point plan for steel which we've brought forward, and I hope other members will be able to coalesce around that. I do want to ask you a question though on another issue that's in the news today around the Royal College of Emergency Medicine, and in particular the pressure that A&E departments in Wales are facing. We know across the United Kingdom there are pressures on A&E departments, but I do not believe that there is a single country within the United Kingdom that is understaffed in every A&E unit, as the report identifies today. And in the FOI that we've had returned, from the health boards across Wales, in June of this year, the full-time equivalent or the staffing measure that was used for consultant rate posts was only being met by 45%. Can you answer the question, First Minister, as to exactly how the government will respond to the report around A&E staffing levels and, importantly, retention of consultants within those units?
Well, I mean, first of all, the comment that was made today, yes, we heard what was said, but I think it's worth saying that the doctor who made the comment also said this is a problem that is across the UK, not just in terms of Wales. I mean, it's a problem for all of us, that much is true. He also said that we are able to fill our junior doctor training posts in Wales, and we've done that over the last year to maximum numbers, and it was said that we could fill it again. It is true to say that it's always a challenge to recruit A&E consultants. That much is true. We know that at this time of year there are pressures. We plan for those pressures. We are grateful for the hard work that so many of our medical staff put in during the course of this time of year. And we will, of course, work, as was acknowledged by the Royal College, with the Royal College itself in order to ensure that we can attract even more doctors to us. I do have to point out that we have already increased the number of A&E consultants in Wales by over 50% in the last 5 years. And we will, of course, continue to do more.
We now move to the Leader of the Welsh Liberal Democrats, Kirsty Williams.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, the news from Tata Steel will be devastating to hundreds of families, and it's vital that the Welsh Government does all that it can to help those workers retrain, to find other jobs and to maintain salaries. When the steelworks closed in Newport a number of years ago now, the Welsh Government set up Newport Unlimited, a development company with a significant budget to try and mitigate against the job losses in steel and try to build resilience within that community. Do you have any similar plans to establish such a scheme to address these significant job losses in the steel industry?
Yes, these are all issues that will be discussed at the meeting that will take place tomorrow, the task force chaired by the Minister. I already mentioned earlier on in questions the request that we are making for the designation of an enterprise zone, which I believe will help. What we don't know at the moment is what the split will be between voluntary and compulsory redundancies. We don't know how many people will be in need of retraining and indeed further help. But we have a track record. We did this in Merco. We did this, as the Leader of the Liberal Democrats is correct to say, back in 2001 when there were more significant job losses at that time. And so tomorrow will be the start of a short process in order to develop an action plan to deal with these job losses.
First Minister, I was dismayed to read comments yesterday from yourself that you felt that you had done everything that you could to help the steel industry. So I'm glad, at least today, to hear that there are more initiatives being pursued by the government to try and ensure that there is a future. Can I return to the issue of business rates? Your government has had full control of business rates since last year. In November of this year, you told me that your government would proactively look at the abolition of business rates on plant and machinery. And now today, you tell us that the Minister has written to the Chancellor of the Exchequer. First Minister, problems in the steel industry have been around for very many months. Redcar and Scunthorpe were perhaps warning signals to us that our steel workers would be next. Why did the Minister wait until the job losses have been announced before writing to the Chancellor of the Exchequer to pursue the issue of an enterprise zone? And when will you be in a position to make a positive announcement around business rates for Tata?
I have to say I'm surprised at the tone of the question of the Leader of the Liberal Democrats to say that she is dismayed that the Welsh Government did all that it could to help the steel industry.
You said it yesterday.
That's an unfortunate phrase and not in the spirit, I would argue, of what has been said today, indeed by the Leader of the Opposition. I have to say to her that we were not aware of what the scale of the announcement would be until the end of last week when I had a conversation with Tata. She is right to say that we knew that there were challenges for the steel industry, but in terms of the scale of the job losses, we weren't aware of that until the end of last week. It is right to say that Tata have asked us to join with them in emphasising to the UK government how important the issue of energy cost prices is to them, how important the issue of infrastructure projects is as well, because we know that the tidal lagoon is a huge project with great opportunities for steel. HS2 is a great project, electrification. These are all infrastructure projects for steel, where there's the opportunity to specify the quality of the steel that would be that would mean a level playing field for plants like Portalbot. Those schemes have not gone ahead, and they do need to go ahead for the future. Tomorrow's emphasis will be on helping people, on making sure that we understand what can be done to help those who are affected, and of course we will then at the same time look at how we can encourage the UK government and indeed I have to say the European Commission in this regard to make sure firstly that we see the establishment of a level playing field where we don't see below cost imports coming into the EU, and secondly where the fundamental issues of, for example, energy costs are dealt with quickly.
First Minister, of course it won't be just the workers at Tata that will be fearful of their futures today, but also those working for people who work in the supply chain and in the businesses in these communities that will be affected, that will be very concerned about what the knock-on effect will be to their businesses and their employment prospects. Figures published yesterday by the FSB show that confidence amongst small businesses in Wales has fallen back into minus numbers for the first time in almost 2 years. Welsh SMEs are losing confidence in our economy, and now a key player in the economy of South Wales says it can't guarantee its long-term future for Port Talbot. Could you outline today what key policies you will be bringing forward to turn business confidence in the small business sector around so that they feel that they have the confidence that they can invest and look to a brighter future?
Well, many small businesses, of course, depend on larger businesses for their existence. If we look at the plant at Port Talbot, it does sustain jobs for a number of many contractors. That much is true, and it goes without saying that the announcement yesterday was unwelcome. We have to balance that, of course, against the good job announcements that we've had in the course of the past year. We look at creative industries. There are many SMEs that are benefiting with the productions that are coming to Wales. But of course, yesterday was more difficult news. We, of course, work with our SMEs in terms of being able to help them, whether it's through finance, whether it's through advice, because we recognise how important they are to the Welsh economy. And the Leader of the Liberal Democrats is correct. The emphasis now has to be on ensuring a sustainable future for steel in Wales, which I believe is perfectly possible. I mean, we're not talking here about an industry that has not had investment, that is antiquated, that somehow belongs in a past era. Far from it. Port Talbot is one of the most sophisticated plants in Europe. It's had lots of investment. It has a fantastic workforce. It has the ability to produce high-quality steel. What it doesn't have is a level playing field, and that is something that a number of levels of government have to address.
Now we move to Leader of Plaid Cymru, Leanne Wood.
Diolch, Llywydd. We'll return to steel later in this session. First Minister, I'd like to go back to the question of health. It's clear from your response to Dr Robin Roop's concerns that you think that Welsh patients should just put up with the current state of the Welsh NHS. One point that Dr Roop made is, and I quote, "In Wales, staff turnover in emergency medicine is getting worse. We've not been able to recruit new consultants at the same level here as in other countries." I wonder if you can tell us how many health boards are out recruiting now for emergency consultants. And First Minister, I heard in your answer earlier on that you said that there's been an increase in spending in A&E consultants, and according to your own figures, that's almost £1 billion. If you can't show results from this, then doesn't it call into question your management?
Well, I mean, first of all, she's misheard what I said. What I said was that the number of A&E consultants had increased by over 50% in the last 5 years, from 40 to over 60, and we will continue to do more to recruit them. Health boards are actively recruiting to current vacancies, but there are shortages, not even just in Wales, but across the UK, in terms of those who are available for A&E consultant roles. It is, however, encouraging that we are able to fill the junior doctor training posts in Wales. We did it last year to maximum numbers. We can fill it again, because that means, of course, that where doctors train in Wales, they are more likely to stay in Wales. And it's quite clear, given we've seen what's happened with the junior doctor strikes in England, it's quite clear that junior doctors see Wales as an attractive place to begin their careers, and also, I believe, to develop their careers.
But if you just look at A&E times alone, then people here in Wales wait longer for A&E than they do in either England or in Scotland. Now, if the situation with regards to recruiting consultants is the same right throughout the UK, why are patients in Wales waiting longer than anywhere else?
Well, it's comparing apples with pears. Let me give you an example. In England, A&E waiting times include their walk-in centres, which are not A&E departments, but they are included in the figures, and that helps then to present the figures in a different way. We use figures for A&E departments. We don't have walk-in centres. We don't use walk-in centres as a way of making our figures appear better. What we do know is that the hospitals have coped with the winter pressures. The plans have held. We know that people have been, we haven't seen what we saw in England last year in A&E. The pressures are there, that much is true, and those pressures will need to be addressed. But I do note that the comments of the Royal College are positive in terms of the engagement that they have with the Welsh Government, positive in terms of recruitment of junior doctors, and of course recognising the fact that there are difficulties across the UK and beyond in terms of recruitment and it's a challenge that all of us in all levels of government, including Scotland, have to rise to.
First Minister, this sounds like excuses, and they sound like weak excuses. These are not new problems, are they? They are problems that your government has consistently failed to tackle, though. Now, Plaid Cymru has set out our plans clearly to increase the capacity in the health service, to bring down waiting times and to counter your centralisation plans, which of course are making all of this worse. Our plans to train and recruit 1,000 extra doctors will improve outcomes for patients, and our proposals to fully integrate health and social care will deal with the bureaucratic nightmare that Dr Roop has highlighted. Now, First Minister, we all know what you are against. You consistently rubbish new ideas that will improve outcomes for people, although usually a few years down the line, our proposals are usually accepted by yourselves. You come round. Is it not time now to come round to addressing the crisis in NHS recruitment, as well as the need to fully integrate health and social care?
Well, let me deal with that issue and the issue of steel as well, because it's relevant to what I'm going to say about health. This morning, I understand from your party's press conference, the suggestion was that the Welsh Government should borrow up to £1 billion in order to take a stake in Tata. If you think that's sensible, and I say to you now, that is not the way to deal with the situation in the steel industry. Secondly, it
Order.
was said,
Order.
It was said
First Minister.
that the money
First
should
Minister.
not be used for the M4,
First
but
Minister.
to buy a stake in Tata. That's money that has to be borrowed.
Is my microphone
Now,
on?
in the context of that, I turn to the issue of what you said about doctors. You say, well, you want to listen
Order.
to the answer.
Will you let the... I'm sorry, First
we don't
Minister.
like having your
First
comments
Minister.
repeated back to you.
First Minister.
I'm sorry, but you don't like having your comments repeated back to you. But let me turn to the second point that...
I'm sorry, First Minister. First Minister. First Minister. First Minister. First Minister. Your microphone has been turned off, First Minister. I'm trying to get some quiet so we can hear what you're saying. The Minister has not finished answering this question yet, so you can't say that he's not answering it. Will you continue? We have to wait until he's finished. First Minister.
I will move on, having used that context, to deal with the point that she raises. There is an issue with the recruitment, she says, of A&E consultants. She is correct. There's an issue across the whole of the UK in that regard. 1,000 doctors does not address the issue of A&E consultants, because what she is suggesting is you should train 1,000 doctors. It takes 10 years at least to train somebody to the level of a consultant. That will not help in recruiting consultants now to the Welsh NHS. And we will focus on recruiting consultants now, rather than saying, as she does, it doesn't matter because everything will be fine in 10 years' time. That's not good enough. We want to deal with things now.
There's no need for patronising, is there?
I would appreciate it if members could let the chair here hear what's happening this afternoon. So please, can you stop shouting across the chamber? We now move back to questions on the paper. Question 3, Keith Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister provide an update on the Welsh Government's commitment to tackling poverty among older people in Wales?
Well, we are committed to tackling poverty for all, including older people. For example, so far, in the current financial year, our Supporting People programme has helped over 43,000 older people to live independently, and the funding allocated to Age Cymru enabled them to respond to over 17,000 requests for advice in the first half of this financial year.
Thank you. Last week we heard an announcement made by the Conservative government in the UK to devolve the attendance allowance to Wales. What discussions has the Welsh Government had with the UK Government on the devolution of these welfare benefits, and do you share my concern that the fund could be cut before it's devolved, similar to the devolution of council tax benefits devolved 2 years ago?
Well, thank you for the question. There are a number of issues here. We haven't asked for the devolution of this allowance. There's been no discussion on this, and I don't know what the United Kingdom government's plans are. What we do know is, if we look at what happened with the council tax benefit, funding was taken out of the budget before it was allocated to Wales, so there was a gap in the budget before it even arrived. We don't know in which way the funding would be allocated. What we do know is that 71%, as regards the UK percentage, we know that 71% of the people who are in receipt of it actually come from Wales. If we got the right Barnett formula allocation, then that might assist.
Miller.
Thank you for that answer, First Minister, to that particular question. But will you join me in congratulating the UK Government on its introduction of a triple lock for pensioners in terms of the increase in the state pension? And do you not also want to reflect, when you talk about council tax, on the fact that they've had a council tax freeze in England, and yet pensioners haven't been enabled to enjoy such a freeze here in Wales? And that has left pensioners hundreds of pounds worse off under your government than under a government in England which has frozen council tax.
Well, I mean, the idea there's been a freeze in council tax in England is a myth, as we know. At least half of councils have ignored the freeze. We know that. We know that. So because they couldn't afford to keep their budgets going under the financial settlement that his party delivered. It's all very well talking about a council tax freeze, but when that leads to a destruction of social care for older people, which is what his party is leading in England, that is not something we are willing to support. Council tax in Wales is on average 17% lower than in England. That is the price of a Conservative government in England, 17% increase in council tax. And when it comes to attendance allowance, I say this once again to him. We've had no discussions over this. If this is something the UK government wishes to devolve, then it must not do it on the same basis as council tax benefit, where it took a cut of the money before that money arrived in Wales. We have 7.1% of the GB population that receives attendance allowance. If we get a Barnett share, we will be tens of millions of pounds out of pocket.
Lindsay Whittle.
First Minister, one of the main reasons why older people have to exist on low incomes is they're unaware of the financial help available. You mentioned in your previous answer about the financial assistance given to Age Cymru. Other charities are available as well. Could you tell us what efforts the Welsh Government is making to help older people gain access to financial help, and in particular pension credits to which they are entitled to, please?
Well, we do support a range of advice providers to deliver advice in outreach settings and in different ways, including face-to-face, over the phone and home visiting, so we can try and reach the individuals and families which are most in need of support. And we need to ensure there are a range of advice services available to suit the needs of everyone. We know, for example, that being able to access face-to-face advice is particularly important for older people, so we'll be looking to maintain this type of service where there is a local need for that service.
Question 4, William Graham.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister make a statement on the impact of the Welsh Government 2016-2017 budget on university research projects?
Well, universities receive a range of funding to support research projects, including through HEFCW and European funding, to boost Wales's research capacity and to ensure greater future competitive grant capture. Saer Cymru and Saer Cymru 2 are now both operational.
Thank you, First Minister, for your answer. How do you counter the criticism, Minister, that the £20 million reduction in the education budget for HEFCW will seriously curtail the amount of money to be spent on quality research, particularly part-time education and expensive subjects, including STEM?
Well, overall income to the sector from private and public services is £1.3 billion. So we maintain this budget reduction is actually a relatively small one to the overall sector. In his remit letter to HEFCW, the Minister for Education and Skills will provide a strong steer on how the budget should be applied. We will, of course, listen to representations from the sector in the meantime, but it's ultimately for the Council to decide the allocation of resources. In terms of research, Saer Cymru has already gained £27 million of grant income for a £10 million input. Saer Cymru 2 has secured £17 million from co-fund, plus £39 million for its other fellowship schemes. So there are many other sources of income that are available to higher education, and the figures that are being talked about in terms of reduction, though difficult, I appreciate that, are to be set against the overall income that the sector has.
Simon Thomas.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Well, HEFCW is quite clear on this because David Blaney has emailed all Welsh universities on the 15th of January saying the following.
It makes sense for you to start thinking about reductions of some 40% in our funding for the next academic year.
Now you're cutting HEFCW's funding, which in turns will cut research for funding for research from 80 million this year to 50 million or less for next year. Now, in your final year as First Minister, are you proud that you have withdrawn funding from research in universities, and doesn't this demonstrate that your university funding policy is an utter failure?
No, I do not. And I return to the figures that I alluded to earlier, namely the monies that go to Saer Cymru. We, as a government, are committed to the sector and to research. And, of course, we see that the research has increased and grown in Wales over the past years because these schemes have been established. And, of course, the funding that they've drawn in from other sources.
Diolch Llywydd. I declare an interest. My husband works for Swansea University. Cardiff University, though, in my region, generates £6 in economic impact for every £1 spent on it. And therefore, if the assumed cuts, including the in-year cuts for that one institution alone, are correct, the cut proposed will take £120 million out of the local economy in my region. Cardiff University makes of itself in one single institution a measurable impact on Wales's GVA and Wales's export figures. What assessment did the Welsh Government make of impacts for cuts in budgets from the Education and Skills Department on the outputs it expects to see in the Welsh economy and the economy, science and transport budget?
Well, we understand that it's difficult. It was difficult for the FE sector last year. We know that the cuts are even higher in England than in Scotland. We know that put against the overall income for universities, the cuts are relatively small, although they will need to have to be managed. HEFCO, of course, have the job of ensuring that our universities are funded, but as I mentioned earlier on, the Minister will be providing a steer to HEFCO in terms of how the cuts to its budget should be applied.
Question 5, Gwyn Price.
Thank you, Llywydd. Will the First Minister make a statement on the constitutionality of the UK Government imposing the Trade Union Bill on Wales without the consent of this Assembly?
Well, we will debate a legislative consent motion on the Trade Union Bill next Tuesday. If consent is withheld, the UK Government should respect the will of the Assembly and revise the bill accordingly.
Thank you for that answer. The Welsh Trade Union Congress released legal advice from Heaven Rees QC that states that the UK Government's conclusion in the bill provisions are not with legislative competence of the Assembly is flawed. How potentially damaging is this imposition of the Welsh Trade Union Bill to the labour relations in Wales?
Well, hugely. Our view is that this falls within our devolved competence, which is why there is an LCM coming before the Assembly. I would hope that the UK Government respects the will of this Assembly elected by the people of Wales. I believe that at least 3 of the parties, well, at least 2 of the parties in the chamber certainly would feel that this does come within devolved competence, and we will do all that we can in order to press that point home with the UK Government, including, of course, taking steps to overturn, to repeal those sections of the legislation, should that legislation become law in those areas that we feel are within our competence.
Mohammed Ashgar.
Madam Presiding Officer, First Minister, one of the proposals in the Trade Union Bill is that union members will have to opt in to paying a political levy instead of opting out as at present. Is it not the case, First Minister, that this, your concern and proposal, is not in the true spirit of Constitution of Trade Union Bill? You're only protecting the money for your own Labour Party.
The whole point of the Trade Union Bill is to undermine the main opposition party in Britain with a view to undermining democracy, in my view. That's all this is about. I do not see equivalent provisions for businesses and companies. I do not see those provisions. I do not see how shareholders in individual companies are somehow asked their view as to whether there should be a political contribution to his party. One rule for them and one rule for everyone else. It is our view that there are sections of the trade... We don't support the Trade Union Bill as it is, but there are sections of the Trade Union Bill that fall within devolved competence. Let's see if the party opposite agree with that this is a matter for the people of Wales, or will they simply do as they're told from London?
Simon Thomas.
Diolch Llywydd.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Plaid Cymru agrees with you, First Minister, that there are parts of this bill which are within the responsibility of this Assembly, and there it's appropriate that an LCM does come before the Assembly, and Plaid Cymru will vote against giving that consent. But if Westminster legislates anyway, because Sewell is a convention, of course, rather than part of the Constitution as such, you've just mentioned that you will look at legislating in this area to do away with those sections of the bill that are devolved to Wales, and this will happen in the next Assembly. It can't happen in this Assembly. If that does happen, are you willing to fight that corner, whoever the First Minister is, in the Supreme Court?
Well, of course, if you're asking me what I believe will happen, the Assembly will vote against the LCM and the United Kingdom government proceeds regardless and insists that the bill itself should come into Wales and also into the devolved public services. And then, of course, this is a matter for the next government. If the bill comes before the Assembly in order to get rid of some of the sections of the bill appertaining to the devolved issues, if that goes through as it stands, then it'll be very difficult to do that as an Assembly. So the legal position at the moment gives the people of Wales the opportunity to invert part of the bill that has not been agreed by this Assembly, and we'll have to look then at the new bill.
I might commend the government for the stand it's taken in supporting democratic rights in the United Kingdom. But can I just say, leaving aside disagreements that may exist between different parties over the merits or demerits of the bill itself, there's a broader constitutional issue around which everyone in this chamber can unite, and that is that the Civil Convention has to be upheld, and attempts to impose legislation on Wales, on areas that are clearly reserved matters for this Assembly, is constitutionally wrong, and that what we should be expressing from this chamber is unity on the constitutional position, which is that the Trade Union Bill should not be imposed on this Assembly without its consent.
Absolutely. The judgment in the Agricultural Sector Wages Bill makes it pretty clear to my mind that this is an issue where the Assembly has devolved powers. We've made this point to the UK government. They want to ignore that judgment, and that is something that they will have to explain. But if it comes to the point where that bill is passed and its provisions are applied to devolved public services, then we will seek to introduce a bill in this chamber to overturn the sections of the bill that impact in devolved areas. It's a matter for the UK government as to whether they then wish to go to the Supreme Court in order to frustrate the will of this democratically elected Assembly.
Thank you. We move now to the next item.